Greetings, listeners, and welcome back to Stock Explorers.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're doing a deep dive into CytomX Therapeutics, ticker CTMX. They're a biopharma company working in oncology.
That's right. And what makes them stand out is their PROBODY platform technology.
Right, this idea of creating masked biologics. Can you explain that a bit? Like, what does mask mean here?
Sure. Think of it like a drug that wears a disguise until it gets to the right place, the tumor.
Okay.
The goal is to prevent it from causing trouble in healthy parts of the body, potentially making it safer and, maybe even more effective right where it's needed.
Interesting. So safer and more effective, potentially. And our aim today is to unpack their business recent news, especially for anyone considering this as an investment.
Exactly. We'll look at the key developments, the financials, the science, try to give you a balanced picture.
And I think the obvious starting point has to be their big news recently, the $100 million share offering.
Absolutely. That happened, announced and priced on May 12th, 2025.
Oh.
They offered just under 77 million shares, 76,923,076 to be precise, at $1.30 per share.
Which brings them to roughly $100 million in gross proceeds.
That's the number. A significant cash injection.
So where's that money going? What's the plan?
Well, the company stated the usual things: research and development, general corporate purposes, working capital.
Which really means advancing the drug pipeline.
That seems to be the core focus, yes. Funding those clinical trials, pushing their candidates forward.
Now, something that caught my eye with this offering was who participated. It wasn't just random buying, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That's a key point. You saw significant participation from well-known healthcare-focused funds. Names like Longitude Capital, OrbiMed, Venrock, Vivo Capital, RTW Investments, plus a large unnamed investment manager.
These are serious players in the biotech space.
They are. They do their homework. So their involvement, it signals a certain level of institutional confidence in the company's platform and its prospects.
And this didn't happen in a vacuum. They had some positive news leading up to this, didn't they?
Right. It followed good Q1 financial results, which we should definitely talk about, and also some encouraging early clinical data from their lead program, CX-2051.
Okay, so momentum was building. But the flip side of issuing almost 77 million new shares, what about dilution for existing shareholders?
That's always the trade-off, isn't it? Yes, issuing that many shares definitely dilutes the ownership percentage for everyone who held stock before the offering.
Like slicing the pie into more pieces.
Exactly. So while the cash is crucial for growth, you, as an investor, need to weigh that dilution against the potential future value created by using that cash effectively.
Okay, let's pivot to those Q1 financials you mentioned. How do they look?
Pretty strong, actually. Revenue came in at $50.9 million for the quarter.
And how does that compare to last year?
Significantly up from Q1 2024, which was $41.5 million. It also beat analyst estimates.
What drove that increase?
A couple of main things. Higher percentage of completion recognized on their BMS collaboration programs.
Okay.
And also some accelerated revenue from the now discontinued Amgen program, CX-904.
Ah, right.
Though that was somewhat offset by, lower milestone payments from Astellas and less revenue from Moderna compared to the year before.
Got it. But it did include a milestone payment.
Yes, there was a $5 million milestone from Astellas back in February 2025 that was part of that Q1 revenue.
And the bottom line, profitability.
Net income was $23.5 million. Again, a big jump from $13.8 million in Q1 last year. That translates to earnings per share of $0.27, also beating estimates.
So strong revenue growth, improved profitability. Were they managing costs as well?
Seems like it. Operating expenses actually decreased slightly to $28.3 million, down from $29.8 million.
Even with restructuring costs?
Yeah, they had about $2.9 million in restructuring charges in the quarter. R&D spending was down, though G&A was up a bit, likely due to those restructuring and personnel costs.
And the company pointed to cost control helping their cash situation.
They did. They mentioned focused clinical development priorities and cost reductions, specifically contributing to extending their cash runway.
Okay, so before this big $100 million offering, where did their cash stand?
As of March 31st, 2025, they had $79.9 million in cash, equivalents, and investments.
And based on Q1 results and cost management, how long was that expected to last?
Their projection at that time was into the second quarter of 2026.
So the $100 million offering, that pushes the runway out quite a bit further.
Significantly further. They haven't given a new precise date, but it clearly extends it well beyond Q2 2026, Gives them a lot more breathing room to advance the pipeline.
All right, let's talk about that pipeline. Starting with the lead candidate, CX-2051. What is it?
Okay, CX-2051 is their top priority. It's an ADC, an antibody drug conjugate.
The guided missile approach?
Kind of, yeah. An antibody targets a protein called EpCAM, which is common on colorectal cancer cells, among others, and it carries a payload drug to kill those cells.
And this uses the PROBODY tech.
Yes. The idea is the PROBODY masks the drug until it's in the tumor microenvironment, then it gets activated. The payload here is a topoisomerase I inhibitor, which messes with cancer cell DNA replication. It's part of a collab with ImmunoGen.
And they're testing it in a tough patient group first.
Right. The current phase 1 study is focused on advanced colorectal cancer patients who've already gone through a lot of other treatments.
Why EpCAM? Is that a validated target?
It's highly expressed in colorectal cancer, which is good, but it's also on some normal tissues, which historically made it tricky potential for side effects.
Ah, so that's where the PROBODY masking comes in, to try and limit that off-target effect.
That's the hypothesis. Mitigate the toxicity associated with hitting EpCAM on normal cells.
And they released some early data recently that got people's attention. What did that show?
It was interim phase 1 data, cut off April 7th, 2025, covering 25 colorectal cancer patients. The results looked quite encouraging, specifically in the patients getting the higher doses, what they call the expansion doses. The overall response rate, ORR, was 28%.
Meaning tumor shrinkage.
Significant tumor shrinkage, yes. 5 out of 18 patients had a confirmed partial response. And at the very highest dose tested, 10 milligicograms, that ORR jumped to 43%.
Wow, okay. 3 out of 7 patients at that dose.
Correct. And the disease control rate, which includes stable disease, was really high, 94% across those expansion doses. Plus, a preliminary median progression-free survival of 5.8 months.
Which, in this heavily pretreated population, sounds promising. What about safety? That's critical for ADCs and for this target.
Generally well tolerated, based on this early data. Most side effects were grade 1 or 2, so mild to moderate.
Any serious issues?
There were some grade 3 events, which are more severe, but importantly, no grade 4 or 5, the most serious kinds. And crucially, none of the really concerning toxicities like interstitial lung disease or febrile neutropenia were reported.
That's definitely positive. So what's next for CX-2051?
They're continuing the phase 1 dose expansion, enrolling more patients. They plan to give another data update by Q1 2026 with results from at least 70 patients.
And then moving into later stages.
Yes. The plan is to start a phase 2 study in advanced colorectal cancer in the first half of 2026.
Any thoughts beyond colorectal cancer?
They're also thinking about combination studies in earlier stages of colorectal cancer and potentially looking at other cancers that express EpCAM, maybe starting phase 1b studies in 2026 as well.
So these initial results are seen as a potential validation for the whole PROBODY platform, especially for these difficult targets like EpCAM.
Yeah, it's certainly how the company's positioning it, and I think the data offers some support for that view. It suggests the masking might be working as intended.
Okay, let's move to their second main program, CX-801. What's the story there?
CX-801 is different. It's a cytokine, specifically a masked version of interferon alpha-2b, again using the PROBODY tech.
Interferon. That's an older immunotherapy, right?
Yeah.
Known for being effective, but also pretty toxic.
Exactly. Significant side effects often limited its use. The goal with CX-801 is the same principle. Mask it, let it activate mainly in the tumor microenvironment, and hopefully improve tolerability.
Making it usable, potentially.
Right. And potentially useful in different tumor types. Maybe even helping to turn cold tumors, those without many immune cells, into hot ones that respond better to other immunotherapies.
Where is CX-801 in development?
It's in a phase 1 dose escalation study in patients with advanced melanoma. That started Q3 last year. They're currently testing the 4th dose level in the monotherapy part.
And how are the doses comparing?
Interestingly, they're already testing doses of CX-801 that are higher than the approved doses of the unmasked version, which might suggest the masking is indeed improving tolerability.
So what should we watch for with CX-801, upcoming milestones?
We should get some initial phase 1A data translational and biomarker results from that melanoma study in the second half of this year, 2025.
And combination studies.
Yes, they plan to start studies combining CX-801 with Merck's Keytruda, the checkpoint inhibitor, also later this year. The long-term idea is maybe CX-801 could be a foundational therapy in combinations.
Okay, and there's also that collaboration with Moderna. That sounds intriguing, mixing mRNA and PROBODY tech.
It is interesting. It combines CytomX's masking approach with Moderna's mRNA platform.
To do what exactly?
They're developing an mRNA therapeutic that actually instructs cells within the tumor to produce a masked version of IL-12.
IL-12, another potent immune
They're
stimulator.
very potent, yes, but like interferon, historically limited by severe systemic side effects. The idea here is the mRNA delivers the blueprint for masked IL-12 directly into the tumor environment.
So local production and local activation.
That's the goal, ideally leading to strong anti-tumor effects with much less systemic toxicity.
And we saw some early data on that.
Yes, preclinical data was presented at AACR just this past April. It showed the concept seems to work in models maintained anti-tumor activity with better systemic tolerability compared to unmasked IL-12.
Early days, but promising.
Definitely. It opens up possibilities for tackling other challenging cytokine targets using this combined approach.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. If you're looking at CytomX now, what are the main positives stacking up?
All right, well, first you have the strong Q1 financial beat. That's a clear positive.
Then the big financing round.
Yes, the successful $100 million raise, backed by reputable healthcare investors, shores up the balance sheet and extends that cash runway significantly. That provides stability.
And the CX-2051 data?
That's probably the biggest value driver right now, encouraging entering phase 1 data showing promising efficacy and manageable safety in a tough cancer type. That's huge potential.
Plus the validation for the platform itself.
Exactly. It suggests the PROBODY tech might actually work for these tricky targets like EpCAM. Then you've got the progress with CX-801, the second asset, with data coming soon and combo trials planned.
Don't forget the existing partnerships.
Right. Ongoing collaborations with big pharma like BMS, Astellas, Regeneron provide non-dilutive funding and future milestone potential. And the positive preclinical data from the Moderna lab shows the platform's versatility.
Okay, seems like a lot going for it. But what about the other side? The risks, the potential downsides?
Definitely need to consider those. First, the dilution from that recent offering is real for existing shareholders.
That's immediate.
Yes. Also, you have to acknowledge the PROBODY platform hasn't been a home run every time. There have been past programs that faced challenges or were discontinued.
Like the Amgen one, CX-904.
Right, and others before that. It highlights the inherent risk in drug development. Nothing is guaranteed.
And the current programs still have hurdles.
Absolutely. CX-2051 and CX-801 are still relatively early. There's always the risk they won't hold up in larger, later-stage trials, either on efficacy or safety.
Anything else specific to watch out for?
Well, there are some warrants held by BVF partners that expire in July 2025. That could be a bit of a market overhang depending on what happens there.
And future funding needs?
Almost certainly. Late-stage trials and commercialization are expensive. They'll likely need more capital down the road, potentially leading to more dilution. Plus, oncology is incredibly competitive.
And stock price volatility.
Always a factor in biotech.
Yeah.
The stock price might not always reflect what seems like the fundamental progress. You know, market sentiment plays a big role.
Okay, so balancing those pros and cons, what are the absolute key milestones investors should be tracking going forward?
All right, key things to watch. Second half of 2025, that initial translational and biomarker data from the CX-801 Phase 1A melanoma study.
Right.
Then the resolution of those BVF warrants by July 3rd, 2025. By Q1 2026, the next, larger data update for CX-2051, covering at least 70 patients.
That'll be important.
Very. First half of 2026, initiation of the Phase 2 study for CX-2051 in colorectal cancer. Sometime in 2026, potentially the start of CX-2051 combination studies or studies in other EpCAM plus tumors.
And for CX-801 combos?
Initiation of the CX-801 plus Keytrude combo study planned for sometime this year, 2025.
Okay, quite a few things on the horizon. So wrapping this up, the picture seems to be a lead asset, CX-2051, showing real promise and early data, a much stronger balance sheet thanks to the recent raise, but still facing the inherent risks of clinical development and the need to consistently prove the PROBODY platform works.
That sums it up well. Monitoring those upcoming milestones we just listed will be absolutely critical for you to gauge their progress and potential.
And a final thought perhaps for you, our listener. Really consider the potential impact if CytomX's approach using these masked biologics to hit targets within the tumor environment more precisely, if that truly pans out in later trials. Could it be a significant step forward in how we treat cancer?
It's certainly an interesting strategy to watch.
As always, do your own homework, your own research. And if you found this deep dive helpful, please subscribe to StockExplorers, give us a like, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration.